I hope that you were well. And I also hope that you had an amazing day. All right, so before we start with our before we start with our actual lesson today, and the lesson is a grade 4 English lesson on adjective and adverbs, we're going to the A plus students.ca. So you're going to A plus students.ca, and you're going to log in with your username as well as your password. All right, so once you've logged in with your username as well as your password, then we're going to choose the subject or select the subject of language arts. And then we go to grade 4. All right, in our previous lesson, we did adverbs, right? So now for our lesson for today, we're going to choose the chapter of adjectives and adverbs. And with the chapter or within the chapter of adjectives and adverbs, we are going to focus on the lesson that says choose between adjectives and adverbs, and is the word an adjective or an adverb, right? So in our previous lessons, we did and what adjectives is as well as we did what an adverb is. So now we are going over adjectives and adverbs, and we're going to choose between them, as well as we will be able to identify if the word is an adjective or if the word is an adverb. All right, we're going to our tutorial lesson, the first lesson. So an adjective is a word that tells us about a noun, right? So an adjective, it tells us about the noun, or we can say it modifies a noun, right? And adjectives, they often tell what kind, or they tell how many, right? Like for example, Jody saw 3 stars in the sky. So 3, it gives us the indication that it's an adjective that tells us how many stars Jody saw in the sky, right? So how many stars did she see? She saw 3 stars in the sky. So 3, it tells us how many, right? Then we have an adverb, and an adverb is a word that tells us about a verb. And adverbs, they often tell us how, when, or where, right? For example, Grace ran quickly. So quickly, it tells us about, it's the adverb that tells us how Grace ran. And then remember we said that adverbs, they tell us either how, when, or they tell us where, right? So most adverbs that when they tell us how, right? Because remember, you are going to, whenever you are either going to identify what an adjective is or an adverb is, sorry, and then it's more like you asking yourself, like, how is this person doing something? When is this person doing something? Or where is this person doing something? So whenever you have then an adverb of how, right? So often most adjectives, they will, when that ends, so most adverbs that ends in or that tells us how, they end in ly, right? Like for example, Grace ran quickly, right? So quickly, and they end in ly, right? So which means that it tells us how Grace ran, right? She ran quickly. And most of the adverbs that tells us how, they end in ly, right? However, you cannot always use ly to tell whether a word is an adjective or if it is an adverb, right? For example, we can also say she arrives soon, right? So it's like asking yourself, so when is she coming, right? And then you can say that she arrives soon. So soon will tell us when, right? So soon, it is an adverb that does not end in ly, and it is like telling us when she is coming, right? She's coming soon, or she's arriving soon. Fred has a friendly dog, right? So in this case of the friendly dog, right, we say that an adverb, or most adverbs that ends in ly. So most adverbs that ends in l, or tells us how, sorry, they end in ly. However, right, here we have friendly, right? So which means that some words that end in ly doesn't necessarily have to be an adverb that is either telling us how the child is either doing something or how he is doing something, right? So friendly on in the sense Fred has a friendly dog, friendly it is an adjective, right? And that adjective it ends in ly, right? So which means that it can be either friendly, it can be gracefully, it can be quickly, right? But you need to know what is being modified, right? Because if you are modifying the nouns, then it means, oopsie, then it means that it is an adjective, right? But if you are, of course, if it's telling us about either a verb or it's telling us about yeah, if it tells us about the verb, then definitely it is an adverb, right? So which means that you need to basically know which form. It's either telling us about the noun, which is an adjective, or it is telling us about the verb, which is an adverb, right? All right, so if we look at the sentence right on top, the number one, you need to choose the word that best describes the verb in bold. So the word that best describes the word in bold. Misunderstood is in bold. All right, so in this case, we can then say, I misunderstood the word problem at the first and had to reread, right? So we can say, I seriously I seriously misunderstood the word problem at first and had to reread it, right? Seriously, right? Meaning that it was, misunderstood, was a bit confused. However, I do understand it now after I have reread it. All right, so you need to choose the word that best describes the word in bold. Many workers take the cities take the cities is it regularly or regular train service to work each day? So we need to choose either between regularly or regular, right? So the word service is a noun. So within that sentence, service is a noun, which means that our word that we are using to describe or to talk about the noun, which is service, it needs to be an adjective, right? It needs to be an adjective. So many workers take the city's train service to work every day. So regularly, it is an adverb. Hourly is an adjective, right? So basically, we can say many workers they take the city's hourly train service to work each day. So hourly. So hourly. So many workers take the city's hourly train service to work each day. Soak hard beans before cooking them. So it's basically like asking how should I soft beans? Or how long should I soak or soft beans? Right? So soak hard beans, let's say well. So you need to soak hard beans well before cooking them, right? Because you wouldn't want to also eat hard soup or hard beans or anything, right? All right, so that is basically adjectives and it is adverbs. And we said an adjective is a word that tells us about the noun, and it often tells us what kind, or it tells us how many, right? And an adverb is a word that tells us about the verb. And adverbs often tells us how, when, or when, where, right? All right, let's quickly go to the whiteboard. Oopsie. We are by the whiteboard. All right, so this is adjectives and adverbs, right? So this is a grade 4 lesson on adjectives and adverbs, right? All right, an adjective, right? So once again, here is now we find a box, and on the one side they're basically explaining adjectives, and on the other side they're explaining the adverbs, right? And in this case, an adjective, it is used to modify nouns or pronouns, right? Because remember, the pronoun takes the place of a noun. So an adjective, it is used to modify, right, or to tell us about the nouns or about the pronouns, right? And then we have adverbs, right? It is used to modify the verb, it is used to modify the adjective and other brothers, right? And our possible questions that we ask when we are, let's say, the adverbs, right? So possible questions to ask, or yeah, with adverbs, it is how, when, where, and sometimes we can even ask to what extent, right? To what extent. All right, let's go to the next one. This is now recognizing adjectives and adverbs, right? So you have an adjective, right, which tells you about the noun, and then we have an adverb, right, which tells you about the verb, right? And we said most of the adverbs, it ends in ly. We are not saying all the adverbs. We are just saying that most of the adverbs, or at least some of them, they end in ly. Specifically, the adverbs that tells us how, right? They end in ly. All right, so now we are in front of us, right? And the first one says happy kids, and the adverb. So the first adjective is happy kids, and the first adverb is playing happily, right? So playing happily. So happily being the adverb within that, basically there within this box, right? So happily, playing happily. Then we have the adjectives. Happy kids, right? Happy kids. Happy is the word that tells us about the noun, which is kids, right? So happy kids. So happy is the adjective and kids being the noun. Smooth rock, right? This is a smooth rock, right? So smooth, it tells us about the noun, which is rock. And then we have the adverb again on the other side, which is running smoothly. So by the looks of it, it's as if the adverb is just a constant using constant language and errors, right? So from smooth rock to running smoothly, right? And like I say, for some reason, it shows ongoing action, running smoothly, right? So even the next one is eating well, right? So eating well. And then the adjective is good night. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a good night. No, it is like it is a good night, right? So what kind of night is it? It was a good night. Efficient workers. So efficient workers, right? And that is an adjective, right? And it tells us about the workers. It tells us about the work that they are doing at the specific company. So efficient workers, right? So which means that efficient is the adjective within that word or in the box. And not meeting, workers, sorry, being the being the noun, right? So workers are the noun. Working efficiently. So working efficiently, right? And like I say, it shows ongoing action, right? Working, ing, and efficiently. Then we have casual dress. Casual dress, right? Casual dress. So casual, it tells us like what type of dress he or she has, right? So she has a casual dress, floral, it is flowy and so on, right? It's a floral dress. Dressing casually. So dressing casually, right? And like I say, for some reason, it is again showing ongoing action, right? So casually ending in ly, casually, ly. Hopeful, hopeful butter, and waiting hopefully, and then we have real butter and really hot, right? All right, let's go back to the tutorial. All right, let's start our test. We need to choose the word that best describes the verb in bold. Pamela behaved. Is it selfish or Pamela behaved selfishly and should be ashamed of herself? So selfish or selfishly. We need to choose the correct word that best describes the verb in bold, which is behave. All right, so Pam behaved. It tells us how she behaved. And let us choose selfishly. And selfishly is correct. It shows us how or tells us how she behaved, right? And remember, we said that with adverbs, with adverbs, some adverbs they end in ly, right? And it's usually the adverbs that tells us how, right? So the adverbs that tells us how, they usually end in ly. All right. Did you measure Did you measure the correctly amount of sugar for the brownies, or did you measure the correct amount of sugar for the brownies? We need to choose the correct one. So let's go with, did you measure the correct amount? Correct amount. Right? So correct is, it's right. So well done. The young boy hid in the bedroom until the guests left. So the young boy, he shyly hid, or he shy hid in the bedroom until the guests left. The guests left. Is it shy, shyly hid, or shy hid? The young boy shyly hid, or the young boy shyly hid. All right, so if we choose the correct one, then we are going to say that the boy shyly hid in the bedroom until the guests have left. Mrs. Jones's enormous German Shepherd is actually a gently giant or gently dog or a gentle dog. So is it a gently or a gentle? Mrs. Johnson's enormous German Shepherd is called. So Mrs. Johnson's enormous German Shepherd is called a, is that a gently dog or gentle dog? Yes. So it is a gentle dog, and gentle is an adjective because it tells us about the noun, right? It tells us about the noun. So gentle. Gabby. So Gabby, did she correct answer or correctly answer? You need to choose the best one. So Gabby correct answered or correctly answered all the questions on the history test. Number, not even number 4. There's no number. All right. So we can say Gabby correctly answered all the questions on the history test. So correctly, not correct, because correct is a noun. All right, let's go back. So remember, we are in the chapter of adjectives and adverbs, right? And the first lesson that we just finished was choose between adjectives and adverbs, right? Choose between adjectives and adverbs. And we said an adjective, it tells us about the noun, or we can say it modifies the noun, right? And it tells us how many. It tells us how many, and it also tells us what kind, right? So now we're going on to the next lesson, which is the word an adjective or an adverb. All right. All right. So it says an adjective is a word that tells us about a noun. Adjectives they often tell what kind, or they tell how many, right? So Jody saw 3 stars in the sky. The giant the an ed sorry So an adjective, sorry, is a word that tells us about the noun and often tells us what kind, or it tells us how many. Sorry. So Jody saw three stars in the sky, and the word, or let's say the word three, which indicates a number, right, which tells us how many, right? So sometimes when you have adjectives that either says three or it says a few or it says 5 or 10, that is basically telling us how many, right? And then we have, like, for example, adjectives that tells us what kind. And what kind can be, it can either describe in color, or it can describe in size, or it's basically just even expressing a mood, right? It is also expressing a mood, and that is an adjective, right? Which is a word that tells you about the noun. And adjectives, it often tells us what kind, or it tells us how many. Then we have adverbs, right? Which tells us about the verb. And in adverbs, they often tell us how, when, or where. So basically, an adjective as well as an adverb, it is slightly kind of not really the same, right? Both modifies either a noun, like an adjective, but an adverb, right, it modifies to tell us about a verb again, right? And they tell us how, when, and they tell us where, right? So Grace ran quickly, right? So she ran quickly. So most of the adverbs that ends in how, or that tells us how, they end in ly, right? All right. All right. The storm seriously damaged Mrs. Lloyd's new automobile. So the storm seriously damaged Mrs. Lloyd's new automobile, right? We need to say if the word in bold is an adjective or is it an adverb. The storm strongly damaged Mrs. Lloyd's new automobile. Seriously damaged, right? So if we, for example, say seriously damaged, then we can say seriously damaged, it is an adverb, right? It is an adverb. Seriously and damaged. Is the word in bold an adjective or an adverb? Usually, the mail carrier delivers our mail by noon. So, usually, the mail carrier delivers our mail by noon. So, the word delivers and usually, right? So, that is an adverb. So, it's an adverb, right? So, usually is the adverb. It tells us when the mail carrier delivers our mail, right? So usually is telling us when. And remember when we use adjectives, right? Or let's say adverbs, um, they tell us how, when, or where, right? So with usually, it doesn't necessarily have to be, for example, when it tells you when, right? Then with when, it is more like it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific date. So it doesn't have to say when it's going to be Tuesday. No. that is not an adverb, right? So you don't have to necessarily say Tuesday, by Wednesday, by Sunday. No, you can even use things like, or use words like usually. You can use words like later, right? These are also words that basically, which is adverbs, and it tells us either how, it tells us when, or it tells us where, right? And the same with where, right? If you say words like over there, yeah, then that is also fine, right? So the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be where you say it is in Cape Town or you give a specific address. No. Where can be here, there, near, far, right? And remember, we say that most, not even most, but some of the adverbs that tells us how, they end in ly. All right, so now we're going to the test. So is the word in bold an adjective, or is the word in bold an adverb? Hector plays in the shadow end, in the shallow, sorry, end of the pool. So Hector plays in the shallow end of the pool, right? And he has a tip for us, or a hint, right? The word in bold describes the word that is underlined. Shallow end. Shallow end. All right, let's choose the adjective. So, which means that shallow end is an adjective, right? It tells us about the noun, it describes the noun, it modifies the noun. Chewy candy always sticks to my teeth. So, chewy candy always sticks to my teeth. So, a hint or a tip, right? It means that the word is in bold, it describes the word that is underlined quickly. So the word that is in bold is chewy, and the word that's underlined is kitty. So chewy candy always stuck to my teeth. So we can then say that it is an adjective, right? Which is chewy. Lexi sees clearly with her new glasses. So Lexi sees clearly with her new glasses. Is that paid leave or still unpaid leave? Lexi sees clearly with her new glasses. So sees, is that an adjective or is that an adverb? So sees clearly, right? So now if we look at the word that is underlined, right, which is sees, the word underlined sees, it is a verb. It is something that we do, which means that clearly is going to be an adverb. I can see clearly now that the rain is gone. All right. Robbie and Kenneth, they get regular exercise at track practice. So regular exercise at track practice. And a hint is the word in bold describes the word that is underlined. Robbie and Kenneth get regular exercise at track practice. Let's choose one. Let's choose adjective, right? Because it is an adjective, right? So now let's go bold back. So that is us choosing between an adjective and choosing between an adverb. Let us do an activity, right? All right, so we basically need to practice adverbs and we need to practice adjectives, right? And an adjective is a word that describes the nouns, for example, nice. And an adverb is a word that changes words other than names, right? Adverbs usually describe how and how much, what and where some some things happen, right? For example, nicely. So as much as adjective is nice, but adverb is nicely, right? And we see that with some of the adverbs that tells us how, we add an ly, right? We add an ly. So now we need to read the sentences below and we're going to circle an adverb and or an adjective, right? We're going to circle either an adverb or we're going to circle an adjective, right? Within the sentences. Sarah sings. Sarah sings. Does she sing beautifully or does she sing beautiful? Sarah sings. Let's choose beautifully. Right? So Sarah sings beautifully and it ends in ly. Emma has a purple dress, right? So is it a beautiful purple dress or a beautifully purple dress? All right, so if we were to choose the correct one, then we can say she has a beautiful purple dress. Beautiful. The snails slithered down the path. The snail slithered down the path. Is it slow or slowly? So we can say slowly. So the snail slowly slithered or made its way down the pathway. The turtle is it slow or slowly? We need to describe the turtle and the pace of the turtle. So we can say that he is very slow. Fred ran. Is it quickly during the race or quick during the race? We need to choose one, either quick or quickly, right? So he ran quickly during that race. So this is but a few examples of, or let's say an activity example of practicing our adverbs and practicing our adjectives. And we see that an adjective, it is a word that describes the noun. For example, nice, right? And with adverbs, right? Some of the adverbs they end in ly, right? And especially the adverbs that tell us how they end in ly. All right, we're going back to the tutorial. So is the word an adjective or an adverb? Like I honestly feel like we did this. Okay, so now we need to say if this word is either an adjective or if the word is an adverb. A sneaky raccoon stole our cat's food. A sneaky raccoon stole our cat's food, right? We need to either show that we are describing or modifying the verb or a noun. So sneaky raccoon, right? That is an adjective. So sneaky. It describes or it tells us what type of raccoon. Simon's painting uses beautiful range of colors, right? So which means that beautiful is an adjective. And but Robbie and Kenneth, they get regular exercise at track practice, right? So regular exercise, and we say that is in adjectives, right? So now we're going to the test. Let's test ourselves. Hector plays in the shadow end of the pool. We need to say if the word in bold, so is the word in bold an adjective or is the word in bold an adverb? Hector plays in the shallow end of the pool. So shallow end, right? So Hector plays in the shallow end of the pool. We need to use the word or choose the word in bold that describes the word that is underlined, right? So Hector plays in the shallow end of the pool. If we choose the correct word, right, let's quickly choose the adjective, right? And the adjective, it tells us about the noun. And then we have chewy candy, always stick to my teeth, which we would say is an adjective, right? Lexi sees clearly with her new glasses on. So Lexi sees clearly with her new glasses. Clearly, let's say that's an adverb. Adverb. Because sees is the verb. And we said here it's an oh. All right, so we have an adjective, right? Okay, so let us quickly do one activity also. Oopsie. It says we need to circle the adverb and underline the verb that they describe, right? The waiter patiently looked our or took our order, right? So patiently is the fact that you are being patient, you are waiting, and it tells us about the verb which is took, right? The cat swiftly caught the mouse under his paws. So caught, we're going to circle swiftly. So swiftly. So swiftly and caught. Swiftly and caught, right? Remember we said that an adjective also, now that we are going on to swiftly, right? Firstly, an adverb, right? We said not all, but most adverbs, right? They end in ly, specifically the adverbs that tells us how, right? They end in ly. So in this case, it is swiftly caught, right? So caught being being the verb, right? All right. Let's go back. All right, so that is now our lesson on adjectives and on adverbs, right? And we said an adjective, it tells us about the noun. Adverb tells us about the verb. Adverbs that ends in how. And whenever they end in how, or if they tell us how, or they explain how, and then it ends in ly. All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on adjectives and adverbs. And I really hope that you're going to have an amazing evening further. Goodbye.